So today I decided it would be something fun to do if we took the most overpowered guns throughout the years of Phantom Forces and decided to use them all in one video. Now granted, I'm of course not going to be able to hit all of the guns because that's a lot of them. There's been a lot of years of this game and a lot of different updates, but I decided we should do this because it'd be a little bit of fun. Like I said, this won't be every single best gun that ever existed, but it will be quite a few of them, and I'll kind of talk about them as I go through them. So start off here, this AUG A1 with armor piercing. For those of you who didn't play back in the day, armor piercing used to give a 1.2x torso multiplier, making this gun 4-shot at all ranges. It was deadly accurate, could shoot through most walls, and being 4-shot to the torso was pretty dang good. That's kind of the golden standard for most good guns at ranges, are going to be 4-shot torso with really good accuracy, and the AUG A1 was the perfect idea of this. It didn't take really any other attachments outside of armor piercing to be good, just because AUGs by default are so insanely accurate that the attachments don't do too much that they're really necessary. Of course, still beneficial, but not required to pick up this gun and be good with it. Now, this was back in, God, I think maybe the 2017 times, if I had to take a guess. I'm not going to be the most accurate with when these guns were really this good because it's been so many years of me playing, but if I had to guess, probably like the 2016, mostly 2017 era, or maybe even like 2017 to 2018 sounds more accurate, of when this gun was just the top dog. It was probably the most used gun in competitive back in the day because it was just so easy to be good with, and it was hard to really mess up with. Even players who weren't that great at the game could pick up this gun and do insanely good because there really wasn't many downsides to it. You didn't have something like an AK that required you to actually be able to control the recoil, whereas this, you just kind of pick it up, hold left click, and you win. Now, one of the things about this gun is that nowadays it's really not that great. Like, it could still do decent, don't get me wrong, but having it be a 5-shot at this range, or at all ranges I should say, makes it kind of subpar compared to other guns that are out there. I guess recently now, I don't know, what would be considered the best kind of long range guns? Like the C7A2, G36, L85, and even though those may be 5 shots at ranges, some of them as well, they do rep a higher rate of fire, which makes them much more useful. Next up's gonna be this bad boy, the M16A4. When I tell you that this gun had the PF community in a chokehold for an obnoxious amount of time, I really mean it. Back when hyperbursting was really a thing and even like macros were running rampant, this gun just was insane. You also had some crazy people out there who were just nuts at bursting it. You had people like Anacetus and things like that who basically only used this gun and were just insane with it, and you can't even blame them for using it because of how good it was. This was by far the best gun in the game for way too long. I would say a few years probably. This gun just reigned supreme because you could burst it at something crazy like, let's say, 900 rate of fire, and it could technically one burst if you hit headshots as well. Like, it was just dummy. Nowadays, and truthfully, I've never been good with bursts, which is why I never really used it. Occasionally, I would macro this in like public matches because macros aren't bannable, which I understand why. It's very hard to moderate those things, so like you really can't be upset about it, but this was just insane, dude. If you picked up an M16A4 and had a macro, you could be basically 100% accurate. We're talking like AUG A1 accuracy with much better time to kill and a much better rate of fire. It was impossible to go wrong with it. Of course, if you sucked with burst, it was possible, like myself, but you know, whatever. Nowadays, the M16A4 has been nerfed pretty heavily. I don't think that hyper bursting is possible anymore. I always see people saying it is, but I've never actually seen anyone doing it nowadays, so take it with a grain of salt on whether or not it actually is possible. Maybe you guys know, maybe I just don't. Beats me. But man, the fact that you could also get this gun at such a low level made it just that much stronger because you didn't have to rank up an account much. You could just pick up an alt account, pop this gun on, and just be insane. As you can see right there, it's still not terrible by any means. Like, it still has some power. We just ran through like their entire team. I thought I already hit him. Even with terrible bursting times, which, I mean, granted, we're not playing against the best players by any means, but even with terrible bursting times, this is just still a good gun. I don't think it's going to be anything special ever again. I think hopefully we're past the macro bursting just kind of carrying the game and we never go back to it, because most people, if they don't macro or they don't know how to get one or set one up, they're just at a straight up disadvantage. And if you do know how to macro, you just simply win. And that's not fair because macro is like sort of cheating, sort of not. I don't know, whatever. Next up, let's go ahead and use the Vector a little bit. So the Vector, when it came out, was something that was, I don't want to say revolutionary in a way for Phantom Forces, but it was something a little bit different. I don't believe up until the time the Vector came out, we had anything that was super crazy high rate of fire with this fast of an ability to kill outside of like the M231. AUG A1. Nowadays, I believe the Vector's been nerfed a little bit, so it's not as powerful as it once was. And also, Hollow Point used to be insanely good on the Vector. Because you would play so aggressively and Hollow Point would reward that close range gunfighting, the Vector was just everything that you would want with a super aggressive playstyle. Being able to kill in like, I don't know, 0.1 seconds or something, like something ridiculous. Vector with Hollow Point was quickly banned from competitive for obvious reasons because it was just impossible to compete with. If you had slightly higher ping and could get first shot off before you actually show up on someone's screen, it was basically impossible to lose. You could kill people before they could even blink. Like, it was obnoxiously good. And the Vector is still definitely good now. Any gun with this high of a rate of fire, the damage that it has is going to continue to be good, but at least we've taken it off the pedestal of where it was just so impossible to deal with. Now, you could counteract it with things like the M231 and whatnot, but of course that had a skill level required to it, whereas the Vector not really. It was pretty accurate. Even today, it's still a pretty accurate gun, and you don't need to really mess around with it too much. You can pick it up even with no attachments and still do okay with it. Like, it's not going to hold you back too much. Still, if you hit headshots with this gun, I think its time to kill is still something less than like 0.25 seconds. So like less than a quarter of a second. Let's actually look because I'm curious. 0.1 seconds. 1/10 of a second and you can kill with this gun. It's a little powerful and it's been nerfed is the crazy part. Now, obviously this gun isn't going to be the top SMG anymore because it's not really the meta. I personally like things like the K7 more than this. K7's a little bit more accurate, has that built-in suppressor so you're not really seen on radar much, and that it still holds its own in these super close range fights. Now, if you want to be like super close range, I'm talking like face to face, Vector, M231, things like that are still going to be kind of king. But if you want an all around faster firing SMG that's going to be better, probably the K7. Can we finish out these last 2 kills or my teammate's going to get them? There's one final kill. Do we get the final kill cam? All right, there it is. Okay, that's worth it. I'll see you guys on the next map. Next up, we're going to rock this AKM. Let me give you guys a little backstory to the AKM and my very rough introduction to this. So back when I first started playing Phantom Forces in 2016, I jumped into the competitive scene pretty quickly. I think I was around rank 40 when a team wanted to recruit me, and then we started playing from there. I couldn't even play in competitive when I first got like invited to a team. I had to wait until I was level 50. So I was level 40, like sort of getting involved, starting to know people, and I still couldn't even play in an official match, which was pretty rough, but it was definitely a learning point for me. When I first joined competitive, my main 2 guns were the Scar L and the SKS. Now, we're not talking the Scar L that we have nowadays that could 4-shot all ranges and is actually pretty decent. We're talking 5-shot all ranges Scar L. Like, we're talking not that powerful, it was just accurate Scar L. Nothing else to it. No other reason to use it other than I liked using Scars on different games, so I was like, hey, Scar L sounds kind of fun. I didn't know of the Scar H back then, and I just kind of funneled into the Scar L and hoped for the best. I joined competitive, and I decided to 1v1 the leader of Phantom Rangers, Elite Bob. For anyone who's been around the community for a long time, that's going to bring up some nostalgia for you. Elite Bob was another top competitive player on Phantom Rangers. Of course, he ran Phantom Rangers as well. And 1v1ing him was just for fun. It wasn't like an ego 1v1. It was something like, hey, let me see where I actually stack up against these better players. And we did it on Crane Site Revamp, which I'll give myself somewhat of an excuse here. Crane Site Revamp's an awful map. The spawn trap is absolutely ridiculous. And it wasn't like I had much of a chance to begin with. But Elite Bob used an AKM against my Scar L, which just, you know, 1-to-1, there's no way I win a gunfight. It's basically impossible. He could 3-shot me, I had to 5-shot him, and I think he even has a faster rate of fire. He spawn trapped me in a disrespectful amount of time. Like, I think I was spawn trapped for probably 12 out of the 15 kills he got on me. I couldn't even move. Like, I couldn't leave my spawn. It was impossible for me to win a gunfight, and I didn't know how dumb this gun was. And it was so far away from me unlocking it. I think it's unlocked like later, closer to like rank 100 is when you unlock this gun. So it wasn't even like I could use it. It wasn't like private servers nowadays where you basically have everything unlocked. No, you just had what you had in the main game. I was at such a disadvantage. I got so unbelievably embarrassed by this gun that I just decided, screw it. I'm going to grind until I get something like this because it was just unfair. Now, this was also back in a time where, like, AUG A1 with AP wasn't a thing. AP didn't even exist. Ammo types weren't even a thing back then. Like, I had nothing to counteract this gun. Truthfully, back in the day, if you weren't a higher rank, you just missed out on everything. Which kind of sucks because nowadays, you could be a pretty low rank and still do really good because most of the best guns in the game are honestly below rank 100. And, what a humbling experience that was, man. Even just thinking back on it, like, I was so frustrated playing against him because I just simply didn't have a chance. It wasn't even necessarily like a full skill issue back then. Even if we were the exact same skill level, it was just the gun. There was nothing I could do to beat this gun, and it has reigned as still being one of the top guns in my opinion for such a ridiculous amount of time. Now, it does have a good amount of recoil as you're seeing here, but man, the AKM is still just great. It has insanely good damage. It's not that difficult to use. I mean, of course, when you're spraying this across Desert Storm, it's going to look a lot worse than it actually is. Put this on like a medium range map and you're not going to have too many difficulties. But I was humbled. Young me was definitely humbled to play against someone who was much better and much more experienced with much better guns. I wish that I could give that experience to someone else, but I just think 1v1s are kind of boring nowadays. But I'm sure other people have learned the hard way. Last but not least here, we're going to use the Scar H. I know of so many people who have said they became fans of me because of my Scar H rant video years ago. And my god, does it still hold true. That was, I think, my first passionate rant on Phantom Forces, where I was just so upset that something was allowed to stay in the game for so long without any intervention. The Scar H was able to, what, 2 or 3 shot, I think it was 3 shot all ranges, but could 1 body, 1 head at like any range. It's just so unbelievably powerful. And with it being a Scar H, it's also incredibly accurate. Ignore what I just did right there. Also incredibly accurate. So you had crazy damage, crazy accuracy, and if you laid down with the gun, it was just ridiculous, man. The Scar H had the game in a chokehold for quite some time, and that's why I was so like passionately upset with it when I wanted it nerfed, because most people in the competitive scene just wanted the gun out. And I don't know why we didn't ban the gun from being used back then. I think we didn't really ban many guns, so that's probably why, but it was so frustrating to deal with, man. If you had someone who could just post up in the corner of the map, the example that I'll use was a guy named Vorobjev. He used to only use a Scar H, and we would play on Suburbia quite a lot. Now, back on Suburbia in those days, you could jump on top of the, like the little grass hedges on the side of the map, and you could lay down and head glitch to such a dirty extent that you were so impossible to hit, and using such a strong and accurate gun like the Scar H made him just untouchable on that map, because you couldn't hit him. Like, you had like 2 pixels of his head where you could actually shoot, and he could see your entire body. It was so frustrating to deal with, and that's where like my main anger with this gun originally came from. Not to mention that the gun was just good to begin with, like not even just competitive players. The Scar H still is something that's really easy to pick up and use, but nowhere near the demon that it once was. If we could just go back in Phantom Forces history and remove this gun, I'd probably be happy. It probably would have saved me so many frustrating moments, but at the end of the day, it is sort of part of the history of the game, and this was a really strong part of the meta. The worst part is, the gun didn't even need ammo attachments. Like most of the powerful guns like the AUGs and things like that, all had some sort of ammo attachment. Like armor piercing was just too good not to use on most guns. This gun, no. I think it actually lost effectiveness using armor piercing. It just was good on its own, and you didn't need to unlock anything else. But that's gonna kind of wrap it up for this. I'm sorry, I'm really sick. I'll probably leave a comment so people know as well on why I probably sound awful recording this. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.